good, everybody? It's your boy Anonymous, the author, aka Anonymous Rap Guy, and I am back with another little reaction video, man. Got my little Hawaiian shirt on today, man, because that's what the vibes is. We chilling over here, having a good old time. Today we got some more Thomas Sowell videos. Yeah, just a bunch of Thomas Sowell videos, I guess. I'm also going to be doing some Jordan Peterson and maybe some Sam Harris if I can find some good little clips of some points he was making. I enjoyed listening to Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson debate religion and like coming from both points of view. I am a religious person. I know that I'm checking off a lot of boxes that people just absolutely hate. I lean towards the left. I'm religious. I know people are just fuming right now. I'm pro-African American. I know people just hate it, but I am who I am. And if you like it, hit subscribe. If you don't, man, hey, you can go to the next video. I'm all positive vibes over here, man. No hate, no negative feeling towards any of y'all. If you have negative comments, they just get taken down by YouTube. So I don't know what to tell you, man. But yeah, we all smiles over here, man. I'm gonna jump into this video, see what he's talking about, see what the vibes are, see what I agree with, see what I don't agree with, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side, man. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, leave a little comment. Let me know what kind of content you want to see, and I'll definitely try to make it happen, man. Lego.
One of the sad things is that we talk in this country as if slavery was something unique to the United States or to blacks and whites.
I've never heard that argument, but okay.
1619 is as important as 1776.
Yes. Our decision to buy that first group of 20 to 30 Africans would influence almost everything that would follow after. I think it is foundational. It is as foundational to who we became as a country as our decision in 1776 to break off from the British.
Recently, some school districts have decided that they'll be teaching a unit on early American history based on the New York Times 1619 project, which illustrates how the founding of this country is inextricably tied to the institution of slavery.
One of the sad things is that we talk in this country as if slavery was something unique to the United States or to blacks and whites. And in point of fact, slavery was one of the oldest.
Most people know that it's not.
They go back as far as there is recorded history. Archaeological finds suggest that slavery existed before human beings could read and write. So, with a racial difference between the slaves and the enslavers, that is a relatively new phenomenon. You didn't have in ancient times the ability to go to another continent and move millions of people of a different race across the ocean. So you enslaved the people who were nearby. The Europeans enslaved Slavs for centuries before they brought the first black African to the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, but so you're not suggesting, you do not wish to say anything other than that slavery as practiced in the United States was, it may have been recent, but you'd be willing to grant that it was particularly perverse and destructive, no, because race got mixed into it at that point, right?
Race got mixed into it in the United States more than anywhere else for a very simple reason. The United States was founded, as the Declaration said, of the independence, said all men are created equal. If that's true, then the only way you can justify slavery is to say that some men are less than men.
I see. So the racial
but in Brazil, where Brazil imported more slaves than the United States, there was no such ideology. Brazil was not a democratic country. The whole issue never arose.
I see.
I guess I don't understand that argument.
One of the most pervasive stereotypes about black Americans is that of the absent black father. Where does this toxic idea about black fathers even come from? Well, one theory takes it back to a 1965 report titled "The Negro Family, the Case for National Action." The report became one of the most contentious political documents in 20th century America. Democrat and Assistant Secretary of Labor Daniel Patrick Moynihan put the report together to make the argument for how the Lyndon B. Johnson administration had to do more for racial equality than simply pass the Voting Rights Act. Moynihan argued that to really fight racial inequality, the government had to understand the state of black communities and why they were the way they were. But Moynihan ended up focusing on one thing: the black family. According to him, the fundamental reason for growing economic inequality between white and black Americans was a crumbling family structure in black communities.
I mean, the number one issue would be that black people couldn't own property. Like, when you can't own things, it's hard to build generational wealth. When you don't have ownership, it's like, you know, a lot of value is destroyed.
parental
I mean, that's
involvement.
just facts.
The report didn't take into account factors like the legacy of slavery, generational wealth, or even economic migration in which men left their homes so that they could provide for their families.
A fallacy is that the current fatherless families so prevalent among contemporary blacks are a legacy of slavery, where families were not recognized under slavery. This ignores the fact that the problem has become much worse among generations of blacks far removed from slavery than among generations closer to the era of slavery. Close quote. Explain that.
Will you explain why it is so, or
Yes.
explain-
Why is that? What on earth is going on there? That is so counter to what we assume.
Well, first of all, most people have not recognized the fact that if you go back into the 20s, you find that married couple families were much more prevalent among blacks then than today. Most black kids grew up in homes with two parents.
His
under slavery
arguments are
itself,
very
and
odd.
the generations thereafter. And as late as the 1960s, most black children grew up in two-parent homes. When you think about it, I mean, centuries of slavery and generations of Jim Crow did not destroy the black family. But one generation of the welfare state did. Moynihan was
I would agree,
excoriated
to a certain
for pointing
extent.
this out.
1965.
But slavery obviously played a part in
Moynihan
it.
report. That's what
Yes.
the Moynihan report.
What is some people that took this as a way of
This is the things that I don't like about that
putting
left
down
versus
blacks,
right
but they don't
argument. It's like,
understand.
you have these
One,
very general
Moynihan,
statements on what the
Thomas
left or
Sowell,
what the
he
right
knew
believe, and
that
it's
his own
like,
group,
most
the Irish Americans,
knowledgeable
had that
people don't
very
believe
same
that.
problem at the beginning of the 20th century. And more importantly, Moynihan's own father deserted the family when he was 10 years old.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He and his brother were out shining shoes in Times Square and Central Park to try to bring in a few pennies to help keep the house going. And so where they'd been living in this wonderful suburban area, suddenly they were in a very rough neighborhood, and they were shining shoes in Times Square to try to make ends meet. And so he understood that this was one heck of a problem that people should be warned about, and he was simply excoriated.
That man has got a baby face.
Black Americans, a group often identified as beneficiaries of the welfare state in America, made considerable economic progress in the 20th century. Fine, of course, but much, if not most. This is the thing with you. The dependent clause is where the sting is. But much, if not most, of this progress was prior to the massive expansion of the American welfare state. Close quote. That is so I want to say counterintuitive, because we hear so much about African American progress since civil rights and the establishment of the welfare state that it really has become a kind of American intuition. Explain yourself, Dr. Sowell.
Well, as of 1940, 87% of black households were in poverty. Over the next 20 years, that declined to 47%. This
Oh,
is all
Queen, that
prior
hair.
to the civil rights laws, prior to the social welfare policies of the Johnson administration. Over the next 20 years, it fell an additional 18 points. But that was not, that was just the same trend continuing at a reduced rate. Affirmative action is even worse. Poverty rate was something like 30% among black households before affirmative action. And a decade after affirmative action, it was 29%.
People love bringing up affirmative action, man. I tell you.
Before there were any civil rights laws and before there was any social welfare state.
Race and discrimination, you suggest, are not so closely linked that they move up and down together. First of all, distinguish the two, race and discrimination.
Racism is an attitude inside people's heads. Right? Discrimination is an overt act taking place outside in the real world.
Okay.
So in his
Now,
mind, there's no
so
such
now
thing
it
as
was
racism, discrimination based on racism.
Centuries. That part of the United States where
His points are very odd.
is where black construction workers were much more common than they were in the North, right on into the 20th century. Most people are unaware that in the South, blacks were the construction workers. I remember a professor at Howard University saying that when he was
He skips over a lot of big
his
details.
brother wanted to come in and he said he was the first first white construction worker in this town.
And so what was going on there? The racism did not, so whites could think of blacks as somehow or other separate, but they'd still employ them,
Oh,
Because,
yes.
because the market made it profitable to do so.
Yeah,
That's the
in
point.
fact, yes. In fact, a law had to be passed to stop this because in the 20s, and particularly as the Depression got underway, uh, black construction companies in the South using black non-union labor would come up to the North and underbid on government contracts, taking them away. And so this was very common to the point where they passed the Davis-Bacon Act, which said that on government contracts you must pay the prevailing wage, which was translated almost invariably into the union wage.
So your
Right.
point on
Before
the distinction
unions, you
between
could pay them
racism
5
and
cents
discrimination
for working a
is,
whole month.
don't worry about racism. It's inside people's heads. You can't measure it. There's
Right.
a strongly subjective. Just forget about it. Concentrate only on discrimination. And the best answer to discrimination is to let markets operate, because then people will discover it will tend to militate against discrimination.
Oh, yeah,
when people have skills to offer, they'll be employed. Whatever this notion of racism in people's heads is, don't worry about that. Is that right?
Yeah, what I'm saying essentially is that racists may prefer one race to another, but they prefer themselves to everybody else.
So they'll do what's profitable.
That's right. That's right.
It would be very hard, for example, for a basketball owner, no matter how racist he was, to try to operate without blacks.
As you showed in the case of the Washington Redskins.
Yes, yes, because there they had a policy of trying to keep blacks off the team for a long time, and it so happened that almost all the leading running backs of that era were black. And of course, as the Washington Redskins began to lose more and more games, it wasn't very long before they decided they better get Bobby Mitchell from Cleveland and put him in the lineup, as they did.
All right, that was the Thomas Sowell video. I mean, not saying that he's not a very intelligent, very smart man, because like in many of his videos, you can tell that he's very well educated and he's very articulate in putting together his thoughts and ideas. The problem with doing like an identity politics debate video is that a lot of the time, even with the left or the right, or even if you're in the middle, when you try to sum up an entire group of people, that's kind of the problems that you run into, is saying like these very generalized statements that I would say most people know aren't true, that most people wouldn't argue or debate with. It's just most of the tactics that a lot of the people who commentate about Republicans or Democrats on both sides of the spectrum, they do very generalized statements and comments and like these very simple thought pieces that like anyone could easily be like, yeah, no one doubts that. Like a lot of the things that he talked about in the video just didn't. Like I said, a lot of the things it's like obvious. Like some of the things he came into was like, that's obviously not true. But it was a very hard stance on where he was coming from, and then he debated the hard stance that he made the comments on. And I would have liked to see a lot more in-depth commentary, a lot more in-depth thought, a lot more thought. Like I said, when Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson do their debates, it's a lot easier because you have them bouncing ideas off of each other, and you actually have you see a dialogue develop within the debate on how they're forming their opinions. And a lot of this is just like very blanketed, open-ended, like silly statements that you're like, obviously, like, yeah. So I mean, I really don't have any commentary on it. I mean, he made his points, but his points were kind of obvious. His ideas that that black people benefited from the left. I mean, that's obviously ridiculous. Like, politicians are politicians. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. I lean left, but that doesn't mean that I disagree with people on the right, or that I think people who have a conservative or Republican ideology are incorrect all the time. And that doesn't mean that I always agree with people on the left. So just for people who watch this video and people who watch him and like comment or get really involved with his stuff, it's like you have to dig deeper than just those very base level arguments that he made. But yeah, I like Thomas Sowell. I'm looking forward to doing more reaction videos from him. But hopefully we get a little bit more in-depth and not just surface level arguments that he made in this video. Kind of a little disappointed in him because these are like very base level, like ridiculous arguments to be made, and then he debates with the topics, and it's like, come on, man, you're way too intelligent. Like I'm enjoying his commentary on a lot of things, but that's way too base level for me to actually be like, oh wow, like, you know, like be wowed by it. So I'm looking forward to some more videos by Thomas Sowell. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Y'all know the deal, man. Please be yourself, please be kind, but more importantly than anything else, man, be dope. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace. Hey guys, thanks for checking me out today. Before you leave, check out the Patreon. I got a link down in the description. Please subscribe and leave a comment to let me know how I can make my content better or any kind of content that you guys want to see. Click like so YouTube can know that I'm a pretty dope reactor, and leave any thoughts that you guys have today, guys. Peace.
And I just really want the simple life. Simple car, simple charm, that's a simple right. No sitting large, just want a simple slice. Here